My dear friends, as I stand before you this evening, I want you to consider something that will challenge the very foundation of how you understand relationships, separation, and individual identity. Look around this room. See all these faces, all these apparently separate beings, each with their own thoughts, their own problems, their own dreams. What if I told you that this appearance of separation is the greatest illusion ever perpetuated? What if I told you that there is only one consciousness in this room, appearing to be many? What if I told you that the person sitting next to you is not another person at all, but rather another aspect of the same infinite consciousness that you are? What if I told you that every face you see, every voice you hear, every mind you encounter is simply consciousness knowing itself through the mirror of apparent otherness? Tonight I want to share with you a truth so profound that once you truly understand it, you will never again feel alone, never again feel separate, never again feel that others are working against you. Tonight I want to reveal to you that you and I are one, not metaphorically, not symbolically, but literally and absolutely one consciousness appearing as two. The revelation I'm about to share came to me in the most unexpected way. A gentleman approached me after a lecture last month, visibly agitated and frustrated. He said, "Neville, I've been practicing these teachings for years, but I can't seem to change how other people treat me. My wife still criticizes me, my boss still undermines me, my neighbors still annoy me. How can I manifest different people in my life?" I looked at this troubled man and realized he was asking the wrong question entirely. I said, "My friend, you cannot change other people because there are no other people. There is only one consciousness, your consciousness appearing to be many. Your wife's criticism is your own self-criticism made manifest. Your boss's undermining is your own self-doubt externalized. Your neighbor's annoying behavior is your own inner annoyance projected outward." He stared at me in confusion. "But Neville, I can clearly see that these are separate people with their own minds and wills. How can you say they're all me?" Because I replied, consciousness is one and indivisible. What appears as your consciousness and what appears as their consciousness is the same consciousness viewing itself from different angles. When you look in a mirror, you don't see another person, you see yourself. Everyone in your life is consciousness, showing you aspects of yourself through the mirror of apparent relationship. This man was skeptical, but he was desperate enough to try a radical experiment. I instructed him to spend 1 week treating every person in his life as if they were literally himself in disguise. When his wife criticized him, instead of defending himself, he asked, "What aspect of myself is this criticism reflecting?" When his boss undermined him, instead of feeling victimized, he examined what part of his own consciousness felt undermined. When his neighbors annoyed him, instead of blaming them, he looked for what within himself was feeling irritated. The results were extraordinary. Within days, the people around him began responding differently. His wife became more supportive, his boss more respectful, his neighbors more friendly. Had these people suddenly changed? No. His consciousness had shifted, and since they existed within his consciousness as reflections of his inner states, they had no choice but to reflect his new inner reality. You see, what we call other people are actually the characters in the dream of consciousness. When you change the dreamer, the dream characters must change accordingly. When you heal the projector, the images on the screen automatically transform. But this goes much deeper than simply changing how others treat you. This truth reveals the profound interconnectedness of all existence and your responsibility as the one consciousness appearing as many. Every person you meet is consciousness meeting itself. Every conversation you have is consciousness talking to itself. Every relationship you experience is consciousness exploring its own infinite nature through the drama of apparent separation and reunion. When you truly understand this, several remarkable things happen. First, you can never again feel truly alone, because you realize that every being you encounter is another face of your own eternal self. Second, you can never again feel victimized by others, because you understand that they are simply reflecting back to you your own inner states. Third, You can never again judge others harshly because you realize that in judging them, you are judging yourself. Let me share with you a story that perfectly illustrates this principle. A woman came to see me who was consumed with hatred for her ex-husband. She said, "Neville, this man destroyed my life. He was cruel, selfish, and abusive. I cannot forgive him, and I don't want to forgive him. He deserves my hatred." I said to her, "My dear woman, the man you hate is yourself. The cruelty you see in him is the cruelty you fear within yourself. The selfishness you condemn in him is the selfishness you judge in yourself. The abuse you suffered from him is the abuse you inflict upon yourself through your own self-condemnation." She was outraged. "How dare you suggest that I am like him? I am nothing like that monster." "You're absolutely right," I replied. "You are nothing like the limited version of consciousness that appeared as your ex-husband, but he was also nothing like that limited version. Both of you are infinite consciousness temporarily playing roles in the drama of human experience. The role he played was designed to show you aspects of yourself that needed healing." I explained to her that her ex-husband was not her enemy, but her teacher. He was consciousness disguised as an adversary to help her discover her own power, her own worth, her own capacity for love despite apparent lovelessness. "But how can I forgive someone who hurt me so deeply?" she asked. "By realizing that there is no someone else to forgive," I replied. "There is only consciousness forgiving itself for temporarily forgetting its true loving nature. When you forgive him, you are forgiving the aspect of yourself that believed it was separate, limited, and capable of being truly harmed." This woman began the difficult but transformative work of seeing her ex-husband not as an enemy, but as an unconscious expression of the same consciousness that she was. She began to understand that his hurtful actions came from his own inner pain and confusion, just as her hatred came from hers. As she shifted from seeing him as other to seeing him as self, something miraculous happened. The hatred began to dissolve, not because she was forcing herself to forgive, but because she was recognizing the impossibility of hating herself forever. The pain began to heal, not because she was denying what happened, but because she was understanding its deeper purpose in the evolution of consciousness. Most remarkably, her ex-husband began to change. He started reaching out to apologize for his past behavior. He began making amends for the pain he had caused. He even started attending therapy to address his own issues. Had she changed him through some mystical power? No, she had changed her consciousness of him, and since he existed within her consciousness as a reflection of her inner state, he naturally began to reflect her new understanding. This is the great secret of human relationships. Everyone in your life is you, pushed out. Your spouse is you in the role of partner. Your children are you in the role of offspring. Your parents are you in the role of authority. Your friends are you in the role of companion. Your enemies are you in the role of adversary. Each person represents an aspect of your own consciousness that you are either embracing or rejecting, loving or fearing, accepting or denying. When you heal your relationship with any aspect of yourself, the outer person who represents that aspect must change to reflect your new inner relationship. But this understanding also reveals your profound responsibility. If everyone in your life is you, then every act of love or hatred you express toward another is an act of love or hatred toward yourself. Every word of encouragement or discouragement you speak to another is a word you speak to yourself. Every thought of appreciation or criticism you have about another is a thought you have about yourself. This is why Jesus taught, love your neighbor as yourself. Not because your neighbor is like yourself, but because your neighbor is yourself, appearing in a different form. When you love another, you literally love yourself. When you hate another, you literally hate yourself. Let me tell you about a man who discovered this truth in the most profound way possible. He came to me consumed with envy and resentment toward a colleague who had achieved the success he desperately wanted. This colleague had the career, the recognition, the income that he felt should have been his. "Neville," he said, "I hate watching this man succeed while I struggle. It's not fair. He doesn't deserve what he has. I work just as hard, I'm just as talented, but he gets all the breaks while I get nothing." I said to him, "This man is not your competitor. He is your teacher. He is not your enemy. He is your mirror. He is showing you your own potential for success by demonstrating it in physical form. Instead of resenting him, you should thank him for showing you what's possible for yourself. But how can I be grateful to someone who has what I want? He asked. By recognizing that he is you, the successful version of you, I replied. Consciousness is showing you your own capabilities through his achievements. Instead of feeling separate from his success, claim it as evidence of your own potential. Instead of competing with him, learn from him. Instead of envying him, become him. This was a radical shift in perspective for this man. Instead of seeing his colleague as other, he began to see him as self, specifically as the version of himself that had already achieved success. Instead of feeling competitive, he began to feel curious about how this version of himself had managed to manifest such achievement. He started studying his colleagues' habits, attitudes, and approaches, not to copy them, but to understand how consciousness creates success through individual expression. He began to see his colleagues' achievements not as evidence that success was being withheld from him, but as proof that success was possible for him. As he made this shift from separation to identification, something remarkable happened. Instead of being competitors, they became collaborators. His colleague began mentoring him, sharing opportunities with him, even recommending him for positions. The success that had seemed to belong exclusively to another began to manifest in his own experience. This is the power of recognizing oneness. What appears to belong to another is actually yours when you stop seeing another and start seeing self. But perhaps the most profound application of this truth is in intimate relationships. When you understand that your romantic partner is literally yourself in disguise, the entire dynamic of relationship transforms. Most people approach relationships from a position of need and lack. They look to their partner to complete them, to give them what they feel they're missing, to love them in ways they don't love themselves. But when you realize that your partner is you, you understand that any lack you feel they're not filling is actually a lack you're not filling within yourself. A couple came to see me whose marriage was on the verge of divorce. The wife complained, "He never listens to me, never appreciates me, never shows me affection." The husband complained, "She's always criticizing me, always demanding more from me, never satisfied with anything I do." I said to them, "You are both describing yourselves to yourselves. You, madam, are experiencing your own inner dialogue of feeling unheard and unappreciated. And you, sir, are experiencing your own inner critic that is never satisfied with your efforts." They looked at me in confusion. So I continued, "Your spouse is your own consciousness reflected back to you. The way they treat you is the way you treat yourself. The love they show you is the love you show yourself. The criticism they express is the criticism you express toward yourself." I gave them an assignment that completely transformed their relationship. For 1 month, they were to focus not on changing their spouse, but on changing their relationship with themselves. The wife was to practice listening to herself, appreciating herself, and showing herself affection. The husband was to practice stopping his inner critic, accepting himself, and acknowledging his own efforts. The results were miraculous. As the wife began to truly listen to her own inner voice and appreciate her own worth, her husband naturally began to listen to her more and show her greater appreciation. As the husband began to silence his inner critic and accept himself, his wife naturally became less critical and more accepting of him. They had discovered the great secret of relationships. You cannot get from another what you don't give to yourself, because the other is yourself. This truth extends beyond personal relationships to your relationship with all of humanity. When you understand that you and everyone else are one consciousness appearing as many, you realize that the healing of the world begins with the healing of your own consciousness. Every act of love you perform for another is an act of love performed for yourself. Every contribution you make to another's well-being is a contribution to your own well-being. Every blessing you extend to another is a blessing you extend to yourself. But equally, every act of harm you commit against another is an act of harm against yourself. Every judgment you make about another is a judgment about yourself. Every limitation you place on another is a limitation you place on yourself. This is why the Golden Rule is not just a moral guideline. It's a statement of metaphysical fact. You should treat others as you would want to be treated because others are you, experiencing themselves through different individual expressions. When you truly embody this understanding, your entire experience of life transforms. You stop feeling like a separate individual struggling against a hostile world, and start feeling like consciousness itself, exploring its own infinite nature through countless individual expressions. You stop trying to get love from others and start being the love that you are. You stop seeking approval from others and start giving yourself the approval you seek. You stop waiting for others to change and start being the change you want to see. But most importantly, you stop feeling alone. How can you feel alone when everyone you meet is another face of your own eternal self? How can you feel unloved when every being you encounter is love itself in disguise? How can you feel separate when separation is literally impossible in a universe where consciousness is one and indivisible? So tonight I want you to begin a great experiment. For the next week, treat every person you encounter as if they were literally yourself in disguise. When someone is kind to you, receive it as yourself being kind to yourself. When someone is difficult with you, see it as an aspect of yourself that needs healing. When someone succeeds, celebrate it as your own success. When someone struggles, extend to them the compassion you would want for yourself. Watch what happens when you stop believing in other people and start recognizing other selves. Watch how your relationships transform when you shift from separation to identification. Watch how your experience of love expands when you realize that every being you love is literally yourself loving yourself. You and I are one. You and everyone are one. There is only one consciousness in this universe, and you are it, I am it, everyone is it. We are all waves in the same ocean, rays from the same sun, thoughts in the same infinite mind. The search for love ends when you realize that everyone is love itself appearing in individual form. The fear of abandonment dissolves when you understand that you can never be separate from your own eternal self. The experience of loneliness becomes impossible when you recognize that solitude is simply consciousness enjoying its own perfect company. You and I are one. Not as a beautiful ideal, but as an absolute reality. Not as something to achieve, but as something to recognize. Not as a future possibility, but as an eternal fact that has always been true and always will be true. The only question is, will you continue to play the game of separation, or will you awaken to the truth of your eternal oneness with all that is? You and I are one. Not as a beautiful ideal, but as an absolute reality. Not as something to achieve, but as something to recognize. Not as a future possibility, but as an eternal fact that has always been true and always will be true. The only question is, will you continue to play the game of separation, or will you awaken to the truth of your eternal oneness with all that is? This is Best of Lectures. As always, thank you for joining me. Remember, you are not here by accident. You are here because your soul is ready for this truth. Take these teachings and let them transform not just your mind, but your entire reality. Until we meet again in consciousness, keep assuming your greatness and living from the end of your desires.